Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Leadership Lab. My name is Chris Bacon, affectionately known as the Dean of the Lab, and I am really excited. This is always such fun to be able to do these discussions this morning. I'd like to invite our panelists to come join and let me do an introduction here. We're going to talk about the transformation, or what's old is new again. And in addition, we're going to talk about leadership, not just media, but personal leadership as well. So why don't I start? I'll start with my far left, your right. Let me start with introduce Britta Cleveland. Britta is SVP of Research Solutions for Meredith Corporation. She's been there since 2004. And I'm going to let each panelist will talk about their personal story. Before, right?
Yeah, I know.
Like long? Well, you started your career in the agencies.
Yeah, actually, I spent the first 15 years working as a social media director at Saatchi, a completely different perspective than.
That's wonderful, and we hope you'll share more about that today. And really, Britta is a member of our board of directors, and is really a driving force at Meredith to understand their consumer and how they engage, not just with their print titles, but with the online titles, and we'll talk more about that. Next to Britta, Radha Subramaniam. Radha is President of Insights, Research, and Analytics at iHeartMedia, probably one of the best titles around.
I wrote it myself.
Yeah, well, that's what it takes.
She got a new job. She's like, I'm still working on my title.
I mean, iHeartMedia is one of the largest media companies. Radio has an even greater reach than even television. But Radha is unique probably in the industry in that she has experience in all facets, in television, in digital, radio, and social media. She's, critical in the iHeartMedia team, really has been recognized in 2013 and 14. Radha was named one of the most influential women in radio.
15 and 16, I forgot to add that.
And 15 and 16, she's got a legacy here.
But it was Zagat rating guide.
It's a Zagat rating guide.
Right?
What else recently?
There aren't that many women too.
But featured on the cover, right, in 2013. So
Print, right?
Yeah.
that was the cover of
Much
something
more
great.
valuable than being,
So, and again, we'll invite Radha to tell more of her story as the day progresses. And next to Radha, I think probably most recognized, Mr. Poltrak, David Poltrak, is Chief Research Officer of CBS Corp, President of CBS Vision, and Director, Chair of our Board of Directors here at the ARF. David is, and I won't mention, I'll let him talk about how he got into the business, but it has been a number of years, and it's a wonderful story. It's a wonderful story.
But with a name like Poltrak heading research, this is meant to be.
It was meant to be. It was meant to be.
I was actually featured in the New York Times in an article about people whose names
I remember that.
to relate to what they're doing.
It's like
And we had a guy at that time at CBS, Vice President of News, named William Headline. So
That's how they were hiring at CBS, right?
So, I mean, David will tell more of his story. I mean, there are so many awards and recognitions. Yeah. It's hard to name them all. But a few that I just want to call out. In 2015, we recognized David with an Irwin Efron Demystification Award. He was the second recipient of that award. In 2014, he was inducted into Broadcasting and Cable's Hall of Fame. He is a past winner of the Hugh Malcolm Belleville Jr. Award presented by the National Association of Broadcasters. David is also a professor at NYU. And there's just so much more that I would not do it justice. And of course, our moderator this morning.
six part of my life.
The page,
That's what you're gonna be telling in 10
the
minutes.
page 6 part will come out. And finally, nearest to me, our president and CEO, Gail Fugit, joined the ARF in 2013, and in her 3 years has transformed the organization. Not only with our original research on how advertising works, but also in her support and sponsorship of the Leadership Lab, part of our mission to lift up the next generation, which really Gail has inspired. And Gail has inspired me for many years. She was 32 years at General Mills.
Yeah.
More than half of that as VP and head of the Insight Group, which during her tenure more than doubled in size. Tremendous impact in driving the growth of the General Mills organization, which became General Mills in Pillsbury. I had the joy of working for Gail very early in my career, and I will admit that I owe quite a bit of my success to her, but I won't let that go to her head.
Yeah, right.
So,
I thought you were gonna give me accolades for hiring you back.
that was the next one. All right,
Transforming the ARF by
stole my thunder. And
Jasper.
and Gail has really curated the team here today. With that, I'm going to turn over to Gail.
Thanks.
Who's going to be moderating our discussion this morning.
Thank you. I too feel, as Chris does, this is my favorite event of Leadership Lab. I believe so strongly in, and we do at the ARF, and we do as a board of directors, in lifting up the next generation. It's been a critical part of our agenda as a board of directors for the ARF. And so these Thursday mornings, when everybody is so great and crawls out of bed in New York City early and maybe literally at home on the webcast, but and comes and listens to us. But the best part of this for me is the storytelling and really bringing to life experiences, because careers are really made up of people and relationships that become your closest friends and colleagues, because literally for many of us in our careers, we ended up spending more time with the people we worked with than at home with our families in some cases, and especially when you're on the road traveling together. And those are just such special relationships. And I want to evangelize, David as the board chair of the ARF and all the great things that he's done and lifted up in terms of supporting me and my agenda and the leadership role here for my stint. And also Rada and Britta and people that we go on the road to various conferences and events, and the partnership that we have. And I just wanted to take a minute to mention that, because you're sitting amongst your equivalent of David, Britta, and Rada when you come to these events. And it's just really, really important to build your own personal network of peers and support each other. The support means the world. So I can't thank you all enough. That's my opening intro. We had just a great phone call yesterday chatting about what we were going to share with all of you today. It lapsed into a lot of laughter and storytelling and some reminiscing. And we'll definitely get to that part. But I want to start with you, David, on, this whole transformation of media and, all the talk about big data and digital. And, you can't pick up the newspaper, or I do actually read newspaper, like paper newspaper, or go online or go on your BuzzFeed without reading or hearing that, television is dead, traditional media is dead, poor old television, right? Share your experience and your perspective on the transformation from traditional media to new media and what it means and your take on it.
Well, I've often been quoted saying that I have the great fortune to have spent the last 46 years of my life working gainfully in a dying business. So
It's been dying for 46 years.
That was the first Time magazine cover on the end of television, was about that long. We always have to differentiate the product the benefits of a product from the product and the form of the product itself. And what television is it's something that informs you, something that entertains you, makes you laugh, makes you cry. It's the content is what is the basis of our product. That content, the nature of that content, really doesn't change and hasn't changed. I mean, it hasn't changed since the Greek tragedies and back in centuries and centuries ago. Obviously the content, the actual specific content changes with the culture of the time. It's relevant to the modern age. So what has changed is the way you get access to that content and the quality of the reception. So if you say if a television situation comedy is something that humans enjoy, if a good drama is something that they enjoy, if a good news magazine is something that informs them of something they enjoy, well, that's a sort of a universal. And the fact that those forms now are done with much more professionalism, with much higher grade distribution, on much more beautiful displays, is a benefit. All of the noise around that, in terms of new distribution systems and everything, that's something that we as people at CBS consider to be our challenge. Our challenge is to adapt to that, to stay ahead of it. Hence, I'm president of CBS Vision, which is a whole unit of CBS devoted to looking forward and not looking at the present.
So let's talk about that just for a minute, and then we'll turn it over to Radha and Britta on this topic. I've visited CBS Vision a number of times, and it is remarkable the speed and scale with which you're gathering feedback and real-time insights on the content. Share a little bit about that, how you do that, how you envisioned it, and just the engagement of consumers to the show. As I found you're sharing that with me really fascinating.
Well, obviously one of the traditional ways that we evaluate our product is we make television programs, we make what we call pilots, television programs, and then we show them to people and we get their reaction to them. So we'll make 25 pilots and we'll choose 6 to 8 of them to actually make into television programs. And the way we make those decisions is we show them to people. We show the pilot program to people and we get the reaction through, they fill out surveys, and we also have interactive devices that they react while they're watching. So actually started with radio. Dr. Stanton, who was the president of CBS at the time, and he created that in the world of radio, and CBS has been doing that ever since that point. And we do it with we use tourists because we want a national sample, and we would use tourists in New York and LA. And then we found that we're getting the same results in New York and LA, so we consolidated in LA, again, with tourists though, not with people from LA. And then one year we needed to expand, so we went to Las Vegas. And what we discovered is Las Vegas is the perfect place. People from all social and economic strata go to Las Vegas on vacation or for business reasons. They go there for things they do in the evening. They're looking for things to do during the day.
Yeah.
And I call it the migration because what they do is there's all these exotic casinos and things, so they walk from one to the other to one, and they just so we set up there, and we built. Initially, we would go in just during the pilot season and test our pilots, and then we would leave, and then we got great promotional value out of it. The hotels loved the idea that we were doing it because we would draw traffic to the hotel. So we decided to do it permanently. And we set up this thing called Television City, which is in the MGM Grand Hotel. It's right in the main corridor. As you pass the restaurants and head towards the conference center and the pool, we're there.
In case you're in Vegas too.
Yeah. 16,000 people a day walk through the facility. And we have state-of-the-art, full range of testing capabilities there. And we invite people to watch a pilot, or we will test commercials. We're testing websites. We're doing everything. And it's open 365 days a year, 12 hours a day. So we are in constant touch with the consumer, and we can do a survey. Our people could come in and say, "Gee, last night we did something. We introduced a new character on NCIS. What was the reaction to it?" And by the end of the day, we'll have 250 people who are NCIS viewers telling us what the reaction is. And that kind of dynamic consumer contact is very critical to us. And we test all the new technology there. We have all, we're always the first one in line to get the Google Glass or the latest iPhone or the Samsung Watch or whatever. And yeah, virtual reality. We had virtual reality before anybody knew what virtual reality was. And so that is what CBS Vision is all about. And as a result of that, this is a revenue generating center for us now. Google, Facebook, Twitter have all tested in our facility, and so have competing cable networks tested in our facility.
Yeah, I love that. So your competitors, collaborators, it's very interesting. Really, that's transformational from a business model standpoint. Britta, how do you see the transformation from traditional media to new media, and has your approach changed?
Yeah. I love the word transformation. I mean, people transform, industries transform, media transform. I think we're going through a major transformation overall right now. But you think about what David said about what it all starts with, which is the content. I mean, the content changes depending on what magazine you're looking at. But the idea is it's a curated, edited by the editors, and this is what you should be reading. It's a beginning and an end. And that is always what it's been. So it's transformed over the years based on what people are interested in, whether they're monthlies or quarterlies. Now there are more new magazines being developed than ever before. And some of these magazines are annuals or maybe 4 times a year, and they can be super vertical, like apartment gardening. So this idea of targeting, I think, is what we're focusing on. So print is not only a mass media, so lots of mass publications, but now recognizing we can develop production now has evolved so that you can actually develop magazines that are so especially targeted. So I think about transformation too, and think about everyone's like, oh, magazines, no one reads them anymore. But you can mention the idea of being on the cover of the magazine, like that's a really cool thing. And at Meredith, we acquired allrecipes.com, which is the largest food website in the world, like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's great. We have tons of visitors to that. But we actually transformed that into a magazine. So it usually goes the other way around. But the idea was, if you're looking for a chicken dinner, go online, you say chicken, and All Recipes will give you zillions of options. You can kind of scroll through and say what I want to do. The magazine does a different thing. The magazine features the home cooks that give the recipes on allrecipes.com and talks about the recipe. And it's an article about a chicken meal, but it's from a different perspective, as being, here's the best chicken meal if you're having company, whatever the subject is. So now this magazine, which started at about 400,000 circulation, is over 1 million circulation, and people aren't choosing the website or the magazine because they serve different purposes. And I think that's what we're starting to realize here, is that every media serves a purpose, and we have to make sure that magazines are doing what magazines should do and not what television's doing or not what digital's doing or what your smartphone is doing. But we'll talk a lot more about the transformation, because the content doesn't have to be in paper. That's not, like you said, it doesn't have to be the same format. It can be online, it could be many different formats.
Awesome. Rada, when I started here at the ARF 3.5 years ago, you were working for Clear Channel.
Yes.
It's completely different than speaking of transformation to iHeartMedia.
Yeah.
And, having been in your offices, that in and of itself is a transformational experience. Literally your boardroom, they set up pictures of whatever city the vendor company that's visiting is from. So if you're from Procter & Gamble, Cincinnati, you have Cincinnati skyline. And so similar to what you're doing, David, in terms of just being kind of out there adopting technology back into your organization in real time. Speak about the transformation of media, and how about if you aim us off into your own personal consumption of media. In this time period, you were at Viacom prior to this and an academic prior to that, and I have a really interesting background, but has your consumption of radio, audio, print, has it changed in this as you've experienced working on this with different media?
Right. So I'll start with the personal and then build to the transformation of iHeartMedia, right? So my consumption of media is 100% digital, right? I watch a ton of television. It's all time shifted. I listen to a ton of audio, always on a smartphone, and I read a ton, but again, through a range of digital devices. But that certainly doesn't mean television is dead or radio is dead or print is dead. It's about the content, right? And that's the undercurrent of everything. And then other forms of consumption, social, etc., just blend into that, because you're reading and you're sharing, you're reading and you're tweeting, and you're talking about that awesome concert and you're talking about that great new show, but it all sort of links together. And I think that's critical because we in the business make all of these distinctions all the time. From a consumer point of view, these distinctions don't exist, right? And so that is the fundamental philosophy of iHeartMedia. The fundamental philosophy of iHeartMedia is not to worry about, is this digital, is this not? It's about being everywhere the consumer wants when she wants, right? And that is core to our philosophy. We're always about, we don't care if you're listening in a shower radio, a car radio, a smartphone radio, or some other form of radio. We care to be your companion. We care that you listen whenever you can. We care that if you're listening in the car and you're about to walk into the office, you can walk and take Elvis Duran with you. And that's the fundamental philosophy behind the company. So we did this relatively audacious move a few years ago where we renamed the entire company after the digital app, because we realized the digital app with nearly 100 million registered users and billions of hours of listening was the best known consumer facing brand of the company. So why shouldn't the entire company be called after digital? Quite honestly, the logo was better and the name was sexier and all of that. But what's interesting, right? So if I tell you the story and you're like, oh, you are a digital company, everyone must be listening to you digital. Well, yes and no, right? Yes. We are a 21st century media company. We're a multi-platform company and so on. But if you peel back all of that, what is very, very interesting is that our traditional media consumption has not declined in any way. First quarter, and I think our second quarter earnings are going on right now, we announced 10% year-over-year growth in broadcast ratings. So our ratings, in a very conventional sense, grew while streaming grew 30%, while podcasts grew 50%, and so on. So they're really accretive and not cannibalizing each other. What our leap into digital has done for us has given our consumers more chances to get to know new people, to get to know new shows, and to listen more. And so we feel that being device agnostic, platform agnostic, has helped us grow the entire ecosystem. So there's a lot of fear that you hear. And this is what our CEO, Bob Pittman's always been great about, right? You're not going to control the consumer. All you can do is understand the consumer and service the consumer best, and the rest will work out. I also want to spend a moment to talk about advertising and what has been going on over the past few years, right? And most of us do believe that the advertising pendulum swung far too much to one end. I spent as many years in digital, in fact, probably more years in digital than I've ever spent in radio, between classic digital and social. And ad blocking is real, right? Like, and the fact that we have to beg people to just stick to 2 seconds, we can get to some kind of viewability threshold, and we count that is crazy because no ad is effective in 2 seconds, right? Like, I don't need to do neuroscience to prove that. Like, it just, 2 seconds of a video ad is simply not enough. And what you're seeing now is that marketers are swinging back. You hear more and more in conversations with top marketers about blue-collar, hardworking media. And that's what I believe the three of us up here represent. We represent, yes, all the glam and everything else, but we're also blue-collar, hardworking media that delivers awesome reach, deep engagement. So as long as you have reach and engagement, all grounded in context and content, you will win. You will do well. And I think that it's refreshing to know that, between what's been going on the whole ad blocking space, as well as all, I don't want to, you talk about the ANA and the report that came out there. There's a lot going on in the world where people are really asking what their media is doing for them. And I think all of us would be proud to say that we're doing an awesome job on behalf of our advertisers. We're delivering, we're over-delivering, we're moving product off the shelf, and that's the best you can do as a media property, in addition to awesome consumer engagement.
I love the idea of the collar hardworking. Yeah, I have not heard that before.
Yeah,
That's
it's
It's actually a Unilever.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're at Unilever and Loop and P&G, like all these guys you talk to, they're like, I need hardworking media.
Yeah.
It just made me think of just one thing.
Yes.
About advertising, just specifically, and the idea of ad blocking is real, so it's totally true. And you think about, there was a study done, I don't know, 5 years ago or so, in magazines where a number of focus groups, and people were asked to say, from these magazines, pull the pages that represent this title to you. And it's across multiple titles, multiple brands, multiple people. And what they came back with was that 3 out of 10 pages that they had picked were actually advertising. Because people come to magazines for the advertising as much as they come for the content, because they know the advertising is going to be for them. They've self-selected the magazine, so the advertising fits really well in with them. And that was a big surprise to a lot of people. Like, actually, advertising is not something we avoid. It's something that you can easily turn the page if you don't want to see it. But you're buying a magazine, if you think of a Brides magazine or a Vogue, that really tells you. But even a magazine like A Better Homes and Gardens, if you're interested in homes, you're interested in gardens, you're interested in your family and food, all the ads in there are supporting that idea. So it's advertising the blue collar hardworking.
I love the story of Variety. Okay? So Variety is the big trade publication, and it talks about the movie industry and the television industry. And so Variety it came out with this little thin magazine, very cheaply put together, and it had all the real gossip that's going on and all this stuff. And it was supported by industry advertising. It was supported by movie companies promoting their movies, and TV companies promoting their TV shows, and advertise, and generally that was a tough business to be in, and the revenues went down, and so they made it smaller, and they made it cheaper, and they were trying to survive. They didn't know how to survive, and then they had a eureka moment. So the idea is, okay, can we get cheaper? Can we get cheaper? Went the exact opposite direction. They said, you know something?
They're hosting conferences now.
They said, you know something?
All over the place.
We're going to make the slickest, most beautiful magazine you've ever seen. We're going to spend a fortune on art and design, and because our readers are really rich, self-absorbed, and we're going to sell $30,000 watches and Bentleys and everything, and it is a huge success now.
Yeah.
You now get this magazine that looks like this. It looks like some professional photographer put the thing together, and you can dream your fantasy life right there.
That's great.
Now, you want to pick up a $20 million house? It's there.
So that's the story of Variety. Think about your career, David, and your own story. Is there a media today a touch point or a vehicle device that you wish you had when you first started? When you think about when you started, they were doing baby paper and pencil surveys, and talk about your.
You mean a research tool or?
It could be a research tool. We were talking about that yesterday about
Right.
speed versus,
Right.
and surveys. But I was just curious, like if you thought if the mobile phone had been available when you first started, would that have made a difference in your career? Would things have been different in terms of how you approached your job? Is there?
Well, certainly
This is Britta's question from yesterday, so I know she's ready to answer it.
the young people, certainly when I was a young person in the business, what I was doing is I was working at CBS, and I was getting my master's. I was getting my MBA at NYU, and I would go in. And the world was changing to more of a marketing orientation. So marketing was really hot then. So I would go into work, and there'd be all these people that'd be all talking about, and they would say, well, the CEO says we have to have more of a marketing orientation, and everybody would look around and what the hell is that? And I said, I know what it is, right? So I was,
You're in the marketing class.
so I literally would go to class on Tuesday night, take my notes, and Wednesday morning I would say, I got a new idea, right? I would just repeat back what was in my class. And that was a luxury that we had then, I think, that because of, as we were talking about, because if you were told to study something and you came back and you said, this is going to take me 3 weeks to prepare.
Yeah.
There was no question about that. Fine, you've got 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And you can sit there and you can do that. Now that's over.
Yeah.
Now they want the answer in real time.
Yes.
They don't want you to have to even leave the meeting before you can give the answer. Just take out your phone. You must have it in there somewhere. Right?
The evolution of someone calling and saying, having a conversation, I want something, and then you talk to people and you get it done, it'll take weeks to do. And then there was the fax machines, and then there's email. Now that everything is expected to be done before you even get the email. And so what happened to thinking? Like what happened to the time you actually, like it's so great when your internet goes down and you actually are like, oh my God, I just have a piece of paper and a pencil and I can actually think. That's what we're missing. And I think there's going to be a transformation going forward where we're over digitalized. I mean, you're on a device all the time. And the idea of luxury is being able to say, I don't need to look at my smartphone. Like wouldn't you love, like for me, the idea of camping in an area where I have no Wi-Fi, it's like, relief. I don't have to
going on a digital diet.
planes. It's like, no, just let me have a moment alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like that's going to change at some point.
Yeah.
But let me answer this question slightly differently, right? So here are the things I wish I had earlier. I'm really excited about them. I'm still learning about them, but I think they would have been helpful.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about machine learning. I'm so excited about artificial intelligence. Like, you always need human intelligence. You always
say
need
more about
people
that.
to
What
think.
does that mean to you?
So I think that the ability to crunch through large data sets and then derive meaning is interesting and empowering. I think we're barely scratched the surface of what it means, right? I think specifically in media and advertising, we haven't cracked it at all. The only people who have cracked it are Wall Street, and usually for bad reasons, not for good reasons. If you should read, what's the Michael Lewis Flash Boys, right? Flash Boys is a great example of how you use data for like not the greatest purposes. But if you could sort of harness that, right? Harness those algorithms, but harness them for good, or at least harness them for media and advertising in a healthy way. I think there's something exciting because I always, I believe that insights come from a spectrum. You always have to talk to people. You always have to do the TV series. You have to look at people in the eye. You have to have that kind of insight. But there's also a lot going on out there where you can just crunch through so much more than you were ever able to before. And for us, a good research project has all of those layers to it, right? It has massive amounts of large data, it has panel data, it has human insight, and then you derive meaning from all of that. And I think, just beginning to, we've used machine learning quite a bit when we're doing projections now, from digital onto broadcast and broadcast into digital, and trying to calibrate all those data sets and so on. But I think we're just scratching the surface of it. And I don't know if it's so much the tool I miss, or I wish that, when I was in school, we had classes in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Well, they hadn't been invented. So that's a moot point. But I think that, it's never too late to learn. And I think if you can harness that along with the thinking, along with the consumer insight, then you're onto something.
I mean, a broad, like a higher level look at that is just having access to so much data.
Yes.
I mean, I think when I was in college, you spent so much time trying to find the information to write your paper.
Yes.
I mean, that was all your time was doing the file, the microfiche.
Waiting to get
and we spent so much time trying to find a source, trying to find this information.
Yeah.
And then trying to write the paper. Now it's completely the other way around. You have access to so much information like this. So you should be spending more time pulling in
Well, I
information.
think, and that, when you originally asked the question, my answer was essentially the same. I think the one thing that I wish I had then that I have now is the ability to so efficiently gather all the resources to answer a question or deal with a problem.
Yeah.
I think what is the process that I go through, though, is I use that to gather the information. But once I get the information, I also go through the process of curation, and it's not all data. It's data plus blogs and posts and people's ideas and people's thinking about things.
I'm really glad that you said that.
And you go through that process, and I think that is some. The danger is if you think that everything that you get on Google is equally true, then you're going to get in big trouble. You have to go through that second process. So, like in the morning, I read the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and a lot of the business-related things on my whatever device I happen to have. And so I go through that, and that's my commute in, right? On my commute out, I read the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and The Economist or something like that. The physical publication, because I find that when I get on the device, I'm just scrolling through and finding the most relevant, the most important things to me immediately. But if the beauty of reading the New York Times is, like we were talking about the article on Las Vegas today, is that when you're reading the physical paper, you come across things that expand your horizons that you wouldn't normally have found if you were just searching the internet.
Right, so it's a little bit of the skill set. Let's because I think people here, to listen to as you're describing it, this is a very different set of skills to go through and synthesize all this content and still tell a story and have, the fingertips for what does it mean for the consumer, because I've heard you tell such compelling stories, all three of you, about your consumer and having this passion for why they believe the way that they do. How would you advise this group in terms of skills? What skills will be most helpful to them and have been most helpful to you in your career? Maybe Britta, start with you, to advance. So, because it's like, how are they going to be, if they're sitting up here 15 years from now on a panel talking about the forward-thinking 15 years, what do they need to have?
Well, I think this one skill that you had to have then and you still need to have is curiosity. I mean, if you're curious, you'll find whatever skill it is you need to accomplish the task. Curiosity, you care about what actually happens. You can't just go through the motions. I think that skill, I think it seems so obvious, But some people just go through their day and get the projects done, but they really don't
So in your
care.
story, Britta, how did curiosity fit in to your, how you chose to do what you do and your success?
Yeah. Well, I think the idea of I'm a person, I'm a human, and why do I make decisions that I'm making? That it was interesting to me to think, how do people make these decisions? So being on the agency side, when I worked in planning, it was, how do I reach someone who buys Tide detergent? Like then I think about that consumer and really understanding what she goes through during her day and when best to reach her. And the idea, I remember thinking about just magazines specifically, but the idea was she must have a household with people that are doing a lot of working out and the kids with sports. So being in a health magazine, being in a fitness magazine would be a connection. So just being curious about what she's doing rather than just kind of looking at numbers and saying this is the right thing to do. So then moving from the agency side, I moved into the research side because my focus on the agency was really curious about the consumer. So I kind of got deeper into that. What is she doing? Tracking what she's doing, tracking how she cares about advertising, tracking how she cares about media, where she gets her content. So, but I think the idea of if you're not curious, things are going to fly right by you.
Mm-hmm. Rada, a skill.
So I'll give you two.
Okay.
Flexibility and confidence, right? So what do I mean by flexibility? It's really hard to predict the future, right? There is no crystal ball. I can't tell you that if you do Python or you do R, this is going to be it, right? You're going to be good for the next 30 years. You just can't say things like that, right? So you don't know what the specific skills are in a technical sense that you need. But what you need to be is incredibly flexible. So this is going on, now this is going on. Let me go learn about this other thing. And my own career has been one of flexibility, right? So I started off as an academic. I have a doctorate from Northwestern. I was a professor at NYU. But I was like, I can go do this for a television network. What I do here, I can go do there. And so I went and did that for a really long time. And then I got really curious about digital. I was like, there's something going on here that I don't quite understand, so let's go do that. And, that comes with confidence too. The confidence that you can figure it out, even if you don't know all the answers yet. And in social, people seem to be really into this thing called social. I'm spending all this time on Facebook, so let me go get a job in social and go do that. Here's this guy, Bob Pittman, and he's working for this medium called radio that I never listened to, but he says that it's the most under-monetized medium out there, and people are spending all this time, so let's go figure out radio and what that means. So that kind of flexibility, that also comes with technical flexibility, right? So I was a ratings researcher, and I became a primary researcher, and I became a social media researcher, a digital analytics person, and a big data person. So even within the so-called research career, I've always sort of jumped into all of these different ways of doing it. What's this neuroscience? Let's call that Garcia dude out there, and learn something about that, right? So you have to be really flexible over the mind. The people who hurt today, right, and you feel deeply for them, are the people who are ingrained in ways of doing things and can't change as the culture changes. And I don't have to belabor the second point, which is this whole confidence thing, right? But no one knows the answers. You're as smart as the next person. You can figure it out. So just going, and a lot of people, especially young women, have this, I can't do that job because I don't know that already. Well, you won't know it till you're in it, right? So you have to get in there. You have to figure it out. You have to be confident in your ability to figure it out. You also have to be okay saying, I don't know, and take it from there.
So passionate, tenacious, articulate. I mean, I think if you listen to how they give their answers, those are other skills. Really, all three of you, I know, well, you have a backbone. I mean, you stand for what you believe, and what I want to call out, David, one of the things that I just so admire about you and am charmed by is your sense of humor. You just have what I refer to as a Midwestern gal, as a wicked sense of humor. And I was recently looking at, because you gave such wonderful accolades to the ARF when you received your Irwin Efron Award, and so we were viewing the entire film, and I'm just to give everyone a little sense, but then you're going to hear it live in person, so get ready to show people how funny you are. it's disarming. You said, well, my team was really excited that I was winning the Irwin Efron Demystification Award. He said, then I figured out that they thought I won the Irwin Efron Mystification Award, which is a classic. That's just you. I mean, you just have this fabulous
They
sense
still
of
think I
humor.
won that. And they, by the way, thought I definitely deserved it.
You mystify everything. You've worked obviously and very, very closely with the C-suite and with Leslie Lubez, and I always riff on a joke about your wife is Leslie and your boss is Leslie and your business partner Leslie Wood at a dinner the other night. Talk about how that's come in handy and how you bring the lightness of personal relationships in your story, and because that's what that
Well,
is.
yeah. So let me do it in the context of what we were talking about.
Yeah, flip it around,
It's
please.
sort of the skill.
Yes. Yes.
So there is if you actually look at the media and what is the role of media. When I was in college, I actually ended up majoring in history and focusing on the social and cultural history of the United States. And so people like when people say you're the head of research, they immediately say, oh, you must have a math background, statistics and things like that, and that would equip you for your job. And I said, no, I actually have a liberal arts education, and I took a history major, and I studied the social and cultural history of the United States, which, by the way, is a perfect background for my job.
Yes.
And I think that's what people, the skill is that I call it the combination of immersion and observation. So let me explain. What role does media play in people's lives? It gives you, there's two aspects that are very critical. The concept of shared experience, all right? We collectively share the media experience, brings us together, gives us something to talk about in the morning, gives us something to relate to. So our shared experience is served by the media. And everybody sort of buys that. But the second value is to establish your own identity within the social and cultural stuff. That's where you select the media that really define your needs. So if you really want to be in the business side of studying media and being in a media company, what you have to do is create this thing of immersion and observation. The observation is you have to be able to objectively observe the behavior of others in a clinical way. But on the other hand, you also have to have the immersion where you have to sort of study what are the underlying motivations behind that, and that requires sort of self-analysis and looking at what am I doing, why am I doing it, and then projecting and seeing is this right to other people. And so, if you want a really simple explanation of how this works, is all you have to look at is Donald Trump. All right. So you look and you say to your the first reaction of
now
people,
I'm curious
someone like
about
me,
where you're going with
the
this.
first reaction of someone like me to Donald Trump and the phenomenon of Donald Trump running for presidency is, good God, is this the end of the world?
Right.
And the fact that
You and my
we take a poll and 40% of the people say they would vote for him and everything. You say, who are these people? And so the general tendency would be to just immediately abhor all those people.
Right.
Good, they must be horrible people. How can we get rid of them? But what you really have to do is you have to say to yourself, all right, this is something I got to know about. Something about this man is appealing to 40% of the population, and that tells me something about 40% of the population. I've got to objectively observe this. As much as what my feelings are, I've got to objectively observe that, and that's very difficult to do.
Yes.
And people, the toughest part of our business, I think, is I have my own program tastes, and so I like Mr. Robot, okay, as a program. If I let that influence the way I program CBS, you know, it'd be the end. I mean, I'd be done. I mean, Mr. Robot gets a minuscule little audience. So, of course, the press makes me think that it's the biggest hit in the world. It's this tiny little audience, and all I have to do is sit in a room with my wife, and I'm watching Mr. Robot, and she's looking at me as, who the hell is this man? I'm married. What is it about this show that appeals to him? So you have to be able to put yourself objectively. You have to be.
Yeah,
Those are
that's a really good point.
This objectivity as a researcher
Yes.
is so critical.
Yes,
It's the underpinning of
perfect
everything.
for being here at the ARF,
Yeah.
because it's what the ARF stands for.
Yeah.
So.
But I also want to build on that, because it's easy. Actually, it's easier to be objective in a research setting, but in a business setting, right? You're swayed by the Mr. Robots and all the hype in the press. And what I really admire about David in particular, CBS overall, and it's also true of Bob, is that there's always hype. There's always hype about something. The world is always ending somewhere. The world is always transforming somewhere, or something is always dead and something is born. And you have to be objective and look at the facts of what is actually happening. So specifically, oh yeah, radio is dead, but wait, 93% of Americans listen weekly, 97% listen monthly. They listen for 3 hours a day. And especially as a researcher, you more than anyone else have to be the moral center or the center of objectivity for your companies, right? You have to be the one that separates all of that noise from the facts and be the bearer of those facts to the organization. I think it's really, really important, especially today.
And that's why at a company like America or any of the companies, you have to have a researcher that sits at the table with the decision makers, because the researcher represents the consumer. I don't represent me. Everyone else in the room has their opinions about the way things should be done. And they may not agree, but I have to say this is what the consumer thinks. I mean, think about millennials, the whole hype around millennials. Everyone thinks they understand millennials, all about sex and quick. And it's like, no, millennials are interested in the same things as other people of their generation were when they were that age, when you start having a family, like same kind of interest. These have different opportunities. So I have to be there and say, represent who they really are, not this, what you're reading, what the headlines
Well,
are.
and as David points out, which is so important, there are multiple cohorts within what's
Exactly.
called millennials. I mean, that's just too much of a gross generalization.
Right, exactly.
Well, yeah. Again, just not to belabor this, but Trump's children are millennials. All right. So look at Trump's children, and then look at the people who inhabit the meatpacking district of New York City, and they're both from the millennial generation. They couldn't be further apart in terms of their perspective and things like that. So yeah, you do have to realize that all millennials are not created equal.
No, they can sway.
We bring the facts. We bring the facts.
Yeah.
This is the truth. And
Right.
do with it what you want, but I have to make sure that I'm there representing facts rather than opinions.
So, I mean, in a way, it's art and science,
Yeah.
heart and science, right? I was thinking when you were talking about the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, okay, so, your refrigerator can tell you what groceries you should order, but really having worked in this field myself for almost 4 years, people's lives were on the outside of the refrigerator, right? They would put up the report cards and recipes and reminders, and there's this rich storytelling on refrigerators. So, how can we just make sure that we continue to connect personally, is what you're all saying, to the consumer and the heart of why they believe what they do. What I'd love to do is open it up for some questions from the audience. Anybody have a question? And obviously the sky's the limit on the kind of questions you can ask, about careers, storytelling skills, anything about print, radio, television.
And I also want to remind our online audience that if you're watching
You
That
can submit.
invitation is to you as well. So
Yeah.
we have, Nadia is monitoring the questions on the chat room.
Yeah.
If you've got anything you want to ask, type it in the chat box, and Nadia will share it with the group.
Yeah. Yeah, Nanette.
Hi. I'm the editor of the Journal of Advertising Research. And I'll talk to you more about this after. But particularly intrigued by how cross-platform seems to be reinforcing the value of print as opposed to diminishing it. But how true is that really longer term? We still see publications folding. We see publications not making the money that they need still to pay for to what it takes. They're slashing their staffs, fact-checking departments barely exist anymore. So longer term, what's that future?
Sounds like a lot of hype too, the idea. You think about magazines, let's take a Better Homes and Gardens, it's been around since 1922 and it's evolved ever since then into lots of different areas. And not to, I'm going to get on TV for a minute, but how many shows that are announced in the upfronts are actually around by the time the season comes. I mean, when you're planning television for the next year, you typically aren't planning a particular show because the show's probably not going to be there. So magazines there is a lot of staying power for the magazines that are able to evolve. So I think going forward, magazines have gone through lots of different transformations. There was a period where there was a huge growth of sort of vertical titles, and the advertising industry couldn't sustain those titles. I think what's happening now is the magazines, the key magazines are staying. And also when you think about digital, you have magazines, genres that are going to disappear because digital is replacing them. When it comes to instant news, you're not going to go to Time magazine anymore for that instant news. Now Time has to evolve into news analysis. So I think magazines aren't going anywhere, and I think the idea of cross-platform is increasingly important, and we see it in the research we're doing where we look at the impact of those people who are seeing advertising both in magazines and in our digital properties. Those people see two different ways. I'm hearing and I'm also seeing are the ones who actually take more action and actually buy more products. So we're encouraging advertisers in particular to take advantage of that synergy. So I talked about All Recipes a little bit, but if we're going to run an ad in All Recipes, the ad could say, go online for more recipes using this product. So reinforcing that connection. So I don't see magazines disappearing. I think they're just transforming, they're changing, they're adapting to what consumers are looking for. So I think the growth, cross-platform, whether we've learned this from the ARF as well, you're adding more and more platforms only increases your value. You just have to make sure that the platform you're adding knows what its role is.
Well,
I'll give you.
I'm sorry.
So I'll give you a perspective that we're something we're watching right now. We own Simon & Schuster, so we're publishers of books, right? So 5 years ago, the hottest thing in the world was the ebook, right? And everybody got their reader, and everybody was going to ebooks, and everybody said that the book, the physical book, was doomed, and that we would be doing everything by ebook. In the last 2 years, ebook sales are down substantially, and hard book sales are up. And we still haven't figured out what the hell is going on, but it's really it definitely is happening, and people are embracing books. Within Simon & Schuster, we have a thing called Attribute Books. We have, I believe, 5 best-selling authors right now that we have are people who are the online personalities, these 22-year-old phenomena and YouTube phenomena. Every time one of our editors just say, you know something? Why don't we take these people and we'll write a book with them and we'll put the book out. They travel around the country. They have 5,000 people show up at a bookstore for a book signing. and they're buying the physical books of these young kids who are making a name for themselves.
That's a great example.
It actually happened in magazines too. When the iPad was launched, the idea was this is perfect. Magazines on iPads, and there are companies that are still selling them on iPads, but circulation overall, less than 1% of circulation is in magazines. So we did a lot of research because we thought this will save us money. We don't have to print all these copies. Great, we've been pushing people in that direction. But the consumers were like, either it would be additive but not replacing. They didn't want the idea of not having the magazine that they could hold. So that was good and bad. I mean, it would have been nice to think you could have it on an iPad because paper, postage, everything cost a person, but consumer didn't want that.
Yeah, I've watched the transformation of our publishing management. First they're very upset about the internet, then they're excited about ebooks and how much, and they're showing look how much our bottom line is improving. And now they're seeing this phenomenon. They go, God, books again? We got this book. They're really expensive to make.
I'll jump in if someone else. I mean, I mentioned Gail was my mentor when I started out early in my career, and I learned a great deal. And,
Yes, I do.
well, thank you. Well, and I think that's a really important thing. I think all of us in the room hope to have a mentor in our careers, and I'm curious for each of you, who was that mentor in your early career, and how did they change your approach? What kind of an impact did they have on your life? Right.
I'm still looking for one.
You're still.
Yeah, can you adopt me? Can you adopt me? So I haven't had that sort of classic mentor-mentee relationship where you've had one person who has been there all along, but all along the way, you've met great people who've opened different doors, right? So I was a professor at NYU, and I happened to run into someone at NBC, and I was like, I was thinking of going and working over on the television side. He's like, great, meet these people. And that's how I, made that transition. Or even, Bob today, he's like, oh, you've been all the places I have been, just 20 years later. So, so that's a version of it. So I think there are lots of people along the way who made introductions, opened their doors, and I try to do the same as well. Because I think a classic mentor-mentee relationship is great. I think it's rare. Or maybe it's just me, and maybe I don't actively go out there seeking mentors, but I think there are lots of relationships you build along the way that enrich your lives, and hopefully you can do that for someone else as well.
Yeah, mine was a little bit more of a different situation. So when I was a young kid in the business, and when I joined CBS, Dr. Frank Stanton was the president of CBS. Now, what was unique about this was that Dr. Frank Stanton was a brilliant academic and a researcher. Mm-hmm. He was the head of research for CBS.
Thank you.
And so, so of course, the first thing that said to me was, wow, the head of research could become a president of a company? And so that was pretty impressive to me. So I really focused on what it was about him, and he was a very unique and incredibly talented individual. And he went on and until he was 65, he retired from CBS, became the head of the International Red Cross, and had a great career after that. But as it turns out, when I was at CBS, I was not somebody who would ever talk to Dr. Frank Stanton. I was there. But I subsequently got to be friendly with him and would go to I remember going to the Harvard Club and having our monthly lunches and everything. It was fascinating. But that was somebody who said, I want to do what he did. Mm-hmm. And so if you can get that a little bit more, perhaps we get a little bit more personal dialogue with an individual, then they're not just an icon out there. But that was definitely something that demonstrated to me that research was something that could be integrated into the overall bigger culture of the organization.
Such a good point. I mean, I want to kind of build on that. I feel I've had the gift of so many mentors. And, David, I feel you've been a mentor to me. What I want to share with folks is I think a lot of times someone will just make a foray and give you a piece of feedback or suggest something. And that actually is an invitation to create that kind of mentorship relationship. So, when I think about our early interactions, you would make suggestions to me in this job, and we had worked together because I was on the board of the ARF previously. When I was at General Mills, we did collaborative research together, presented together. But when I got this job, you would frequently call me up or pull me aside and give me feedback or suggestions. And it's very easy when someone gives you a suggestion, have you thought about this? Or I think the ARF should be working in this area. It's very easy to be of yourself and your own point of view about, well, thank you very much, right? And, but like, you know what you're going to do, and you just kind of take it as a data point. That is not what that ever is. It's an invitation to have a relationship. If anyone makes a suggestion, and sometimes suggestions, and this is more true, not so true of David's and my rapport, but more true of times at General Mills when maybe someone in R&D would directly criticize the research we were doing. That was an invitation to have a relationship. It doesn't always come in a beautiful package, right? It sometimes comes, as something that lands, but what it is like, I want to be engaged. I care about what you're doing. So it's keeping, that's why I think the sense of humor and having an open mind to, all right, what is this transaction that we're having, and how could that be transformed into a meaningful mutual admiration, kind of, dialogue and conversation going back and forth, because that's ultimately what mentorship is about. And the one thing that really hasn't come up as a skill that I know all three of you are really excellent at is listening, being a good listener and listening for intent. What is the person really trying to say? What is this feedback really? And I think that's those are kind of higher level career skills.
I do want to remind folks, we've got about 15 minutes left in today's class, so please, any thoughts, any questions?
And Nadia's standing.
And Nadia's got some.
All right, that's good. We got some hands going here.
You talked about skills like curiosity, flexibility, listening. How do you foster those types of skills?
People that work for you
Or in yourself.
In others. And for context, I'm in reporting development, so I work with a lot of young researchers. So something I have to think about a lot is how to get people to think like that.
I think modeling it and doing it yourself. And pointing it out. The idea of being curious, I'm constantly asking people, why would you do that? Why did you make that decision? And I have 3 kids too, and I kind of do the same thing with my kids. Why? Don't just do something. You got to ask them why. So if you're continually being curious and forcing them to be curious and listening, if you can show them that you've listened to them, that's a sign that everyone appreciates really being listened to. So I think mirroring and fostering yourself is like the best start.
Well, one of the things that sort of a natural way to do it is so one of the things we do a lot of is focus groups and one-on-one interviews and focus groups. Mm-hmm. And so what we'll do is we have analysts, we have this process where when we have a focus group, the senior people that are observing the focus group, we don't give our opinions at all. Mm-hmm. We just sit there and we have the young analysts write up the focus group. Mm. And then we have a conversation really with them, and we point out where, and they'll make the classic mistake of filtering the information through their own perceptions and their own point of view. And and we'll say, no, let's go back and watch. You said that this person said that you said that they really didn't like this character. And let's go back and play it again. See, that was one person who said they didn't like the character, and you don't like the character. So you identified with You've got
I love that.
how you
Yeah.
got to put it everything.
Danny, you had a question?
You're saying that we're currently in television, and if there is a surge of web-based television, like what are your feelings on CBS's future? Have you guys ever considered possibly going to a web-based programming, or?
Well, again, it goes to programming is programming. The distribution aspects of it are different. Certainly the way programming changes is that NCIS or Big Bang Theory is a hit now. It would have been a hit in 1960. It would have been a hit in 1970 or 1980. Would have been different context probably, but that's a basic, fundamental, broad-based mass appeal hit. What's changed now is that a show, like I mentioned, Mr. Robot, in this world, that's now a viable program that will get advertising support, will be popular, and will last several seasons. That wouldn't have happened because there weren't the outlets for that. So the internet, I mean, James Corden on CBS is on at 12:30 at night.
Right.
He's a phenomenal talent. He does these things called carpool karaoke, and he puts them on the internet, and he's one of the biggest YouTube stars.
Yes, exactly.
So that's the way we're trying to, integrate, to bring these. We're trying to use the new media as discovery media for us, and to learn from that, but understand it. But to put this in a business context, one of the big issues right now is, and you mentioned Netflix, and if you look at what CBS has done and look at Hulu, and so you say, okay, so Netflix is this big phenomenon, and you see a lot of people write about Netflix as being a threat for the broadcast company, right? Actually, what Netflix has done, Netflix created Hulu. Hulu is owned by all the broadcast networks but CBS. CBS, because we don't play well with others, we created CBS All Access, okay, which is, now that's and we have Showtime. Showtime is now being transformed into like Netflix.
Yeah.
And so we're moving out of direction. As a result, in the last 3 years, CBS has gone from a company that's generated most of its revenues from advertising to a company that's generating less than half of its revenues from advertising, and making more of its revenues are now coming from direct to the consumer subscription. So we have adapted and taken advantage of the opportunity that Netflix revealed. By the way, they did it on the backbone of buying a lot of product from us.
Nadia,
Okay,
she
so I
has
have
some
a
online
question
questions.
from an online participant. Will we see a greater mix of subscription in the business model? If so, where will it happen? Is the advertisement and click volume enough for publishers given the rise of social media and newsfeed apps?
I think you just answered that, which is that subscription models, didn't exist a few years ago outside of, say, premium cable or even the cable package. And Netflix has opened it up for television. Spotify and Pandora have opened that up for the rest of us. So I think we're all realizing that we don't need to be solely dependent on advertising as a source of revenue. And there's a whole other world we can play in to enhance our businesses. So I think, a lot of opportunity there.
By the way, you also have to understand that the consumer does not want a world free of advertising. They want less advertising. They want
better advertising.
They want better
advertising.
advertising. They want less annoying advertising.
Yes.
But when we do our simulations and we tell people you can have it with advertising or without advertising, and the differential is as little as $1. 85% of the people
Yeah.
take it with advertising. Because people recognize that advertising is informative and advertising can be entertaining, and within their lives they see advertising as having a function. They just would like to see less irrelevant advertising.
That's a total challenge for our industry right now, especially with mobile. I mean, we haven't solved the mobile advertising solution yet. I mean, no one wants to be interrupted on their mobile phone when they're looking at a map and also you get it. They don't want that. So that hasn't been figured out. We're working really hard on it.
And especially mobile banners.
Or even classic digital, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you never solved advertising for the piece. Right? Nobody remembers or likes a display ad. So
And we've actually trained people in the television business to accept advertising.
Right.
And to be comfortable with it. In fact, one of my great surprise statistics is that what has happened is, so if you look at television advertising, so you're watching television and the ads come on and people are always diverted from the ads. They'll turn and talk, they'll pick up a newspaper or a magazine. They'll go and get a beer or something like that, but they're not focused. What has happened is because of the second screen device, because people are tweeting and IMing and doing all of this while they're watching television, they actually, when the ads come on, they don't move physically and they don't divert themselves in some other way. They're doing the same thing that they were doing when the program was on. They're interacting with their device. And so we're seeing higher ad recall scores. And the people who are on Twitter while they're watching television have higher ad recall. And DVR, fast forwarding from DVRs is going down. The percentage of ads that are fast forwarded through is declining because you can't fast forward through an ad and also IM on your computer. You can't do them both. You got to either pick up the remote or stay with your phone. So interesting.
So let's tie bow on it with one prediction. One prediction for we're here 1 year from now. What's one prediction of something? It can be a transformation. It can be, well, look, this is a big year, right? We've got the Olympics, we've got the election. I think this probably is going to be an inflection point year 2016. We would have predicted, but maybe I wouldn't have predicted it would go this way as it is now. Britta, you want to?
This Pokemon Go thing, the idea of
Pokemon Go. Yeah.
What's going to happen with that in a year, and how is that going to get into advertising? Take advantage of that somehow. I think there's something there. I mean, think about Snapchat and social media and VR, like something. I don't know, but I can't predict what's going to happen, but I think there's something along that.
So that's keep your eye on this one, right? Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
So just building on that, right, I think we will finally, they may not be mass adoption, but augmented reality and virtual reality, we will be farther along than we are today. But I also want to make another bold prediction, which is dollars will swing back to so-called traditional media. I think you already start to see that swing. I think that, the ANA report, the viewability issues, all of that is going to stay front and center. And I think you're going to see some swing back and, And I also predict, I think, though I, could be wrong, that Hillary Clinton will be president.
Well, I was going to say Donald Trump won't be president, but that's the same thing. I think I think the thing to keep your eyes on right now, where there's tremendous potential that has yet been untapped, is smart TV.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
More and more people.
Well, that combines.
More and more people have smart TVs now. Most TVs that are sold in the United States are now smart TVs. A large percentage of the people who have smart TVs have never used any of the smart TV capabilities. And I think that had great potential in the research business. I mean, you can get a lot of feedback off of a smart TV. So watch. Vizio, Samsung have major analytic teams now working on the data side of smart TVs. So watch for that.
Fabulous. All right, you heard it here first. These are the predictions for the next year, and we hope to see you on a number of Thursdays between now and then, and at any and all of our upcoming ARF events. We're just absolutely delighted to have you here, Chris. I want to give a tribute to you for your leadership and the really terrific job that you've done setting up this project.
And let's give an applause for our panelists today. So we thank you for everybody online. We invite you to join us next week, where we will have digital. Trent Busker, who is from Oracle Data Cloud, will be talking about ad tech. So again, different perspective, but that's what we do here. So we look forward to seeing you all next week. And for now, the lab is closed. Thank you for being here.
The lab
Lab is closed.
Thank you. Is that the line?
My pleasure.
Awesome.
That's
Wow, thank you.
Forrest, thanks.